viewers, welcome to a new episode on blockchain, which I'm totally excited about. This is fantastic. It is incredibly interesting technology. We have just come out of another lockdown, yay us. However, a little concerned we might be going straight back in again. Well, let's pick up Sven because he is going to tell us what your questions are today. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I am excellent. It's good to be out again.
It is good to be out again, isn't it?
It is. So, blockchain.
Yes.
We're going to ask 3 questions today, right? First question is, what on earth is blockchain? If you haven't been able to Google it, and even if you do Google it, it's a bit of a mind-bending subject, so we're going to try and simplify that.
Great.
The second question that we're going to ask is, what is the difference between blockchain and the internet? Right? Because people get confused. In fact, there's so much confusion. What's the difference between blockchain and internet, cryptocurrency, all those sort of things? We're going to demystify all that. And that brings us to the third question. Why are we talking about this now?
Yes.
And it is important to talk about things now because we've reached a point in our, I think, internet history where we need to really look at how we can potentially do things. And that's probably the most exciting thing about the subject of blockchain.
I'm super excited.
Yes, indeed.
Let's pick up Speedo.
Let's do that.
Hey Speedo, where are we going today? Unfortunately, Speedo couldn't make it today, so we have in fact replaced him with a teddy bear. Not a puppet, as we promised, but we figured a puppet still needs to talk, and we don't really want to hear him talk, so it's a teddy bear.
Yeah, quite a cute one.
But don't worry about it, we actually do have somebody that is going to fill in for him, and that is Andrew Phillips.
That's right, Andrew Phillips is a fantastic guy. I've known him for a number of years. He's the author of a great book called CEO-Led Sales. But just like any good person who's enthusiastic about the industry, he's also enthusiastic about beer. In fact, he makes his own beer called Smuggler's Wharf Brewery beer. And that is what we're going to be drinking today at the Noble Experiment, except for Beck, who's the designated driver.
Well, I might just have like half a beer, or just a taste, you know, that's it. But I'm very much looking forward to it, and Andrew is a great person and very knowledgeable, so very excited to hear what he has to say on the topic. Welcome to Designated Driver, where ordinary people are talking extraordinary things in technology. And blockchain, created in 2008, underpinning Bitcoin, cryptocurrency. But what is the exact technology?
So blockchain is... Nice usage.
Well, I just was thinking, I was listening to you talk about that, and I think that you but I think that you're missing it's about trust. If we have a system that works on blockchain, we can trust it. Today, there are many mechanisms that we have to trust, but we trust because there's so many processes and things latched around that, which slows things down and which adds cost to the economy.
What about if we describe what the actual block is?
So basically, it's such a simple concept insofar as, from a technical perspective, it is a bunch of data. That data gets hashed and it comes up with a unique number, right? And you cannot change what's in that block. That's why it's called a block, right? And then the second block of data takes the hash from the previous one, hashes it into the next bit of data, which once again you can't change, and then that becomes the source of truth, right? And all these blocks basically are all over the place, and they're all synchronized, which is why blockchain requires a lot of compute power. I know you're going to get bored very soon, but at the end of the day, this is what's called the distributed ledger. So everyone gets all these blocks, and you cannot go back and change anything, because to go back and change anything, you have to go back and change everything. That's it. That's why you can trust it, right? At the end of the day, to your point, it's trustworthy because you can't go backwards. That's a bad point about blockchain as well. You can't go back. But in moving forward, everyone gets to see what you're doing, and it underpins another buzzword, the democratization of data. Everyone gets to see everything.
Well, that's right. It's about efficiency and security within a transaction.
Correct. Yeah. If you think about it this way, all the things, and this is back to Andrew's point about trust, all the things that we've built over hundreds of years of e-commerce and travel and so everything that we do, right? We've built regulations, we've built laws, we've built contracts, we've built all these things to make sure that what you say is going to happen is actually going to happen. And now we're looking at a digital version of that where all of that is built in.
Well, this is the point too, isn't it? Because what we've also built is careers. We've built a whole pile of professions that have a vested interest in those professions maintaining their ownership over a part of a process that isn't underpinned by any true trust. And so there's no... So if we've got lawyers and doctors and accountants
auditors,
and auditors, their livelihoods rely upon the fact that we don't have a blockchain style technology. And whether blockchain's the answer or not, but we don't have that style of technology.
And also it's lucrative, right? Because the more
Clearly.
complex things get, the less we normal humans understand it, the more we need to pay all these intermediaries, banks, right? Just to do basic things.
Which is one of the benefits, really, is that you can potentially get rid of all of those. Well, benefits for some people, right? So if you think about smart contracts, there won't be a need for lawyers and accountants. Or if you think about transactions anyway, is there a need for a bank? Bank fees, those go out the window.
And that's what spooks a lot of people. So when when you talk about blockchain, well, there are a couple of things. First of all, it gets lumped in with cryptocurrency, and that's certainly a big part of it, but it's not the be-all and end-all. In fact, that's the easiest part of about blockchain. What spooks people is that the white-collar industry is under threat. They think, oh my God, what do you mean we don't need banks, we don't need lawyers? That's not quite true. Of course we need those people, but they need to get back to doing what they should be doing, which is the complicated stuff that needs a lawyer or an auditor. Not the simple, I need to rent a home, or I need to purchase something, or I need to move apples from a farm to a distributor. These are simple, repetitive things.
Yeah, and this is the absolute story of evolution, where new things have evolved. While they were being evolved, the people who were impacted by them were frightened by them and tried to slow them down. They still evolved, but those people are now doing something different and productive as well. So there isn't going to be a time when all of those professions we've mentioned are now no longer there, and there will be a new set of professions that we probably can't imagine right today that will take the place of those things. That's exactly just the way the world's worked for the last thousands of years.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the, we talk about, why are we even talking about blockchain? And that's one of the reasons is to go, well, it forces you to think about how have we gotten to where we are now, how complex things are, and it forces you to go, how much of that is still valid? How much has it gone past its sell-by date, given that we have technologies now that are available and working, by the way. Blockchain is out there, it's working, but let's have a look at ourselves and go, well, what can we do better? And the reason we need to do better is because as our country, we're expensive, right? So using all those overlay intermediaries in the way we're using it, we become uncompetitive, we become expensive, and we need to think about how can we actually simplify how we even operate.
It's so critical because we've got a digital environment called the internet. We've got that sitting there, and inside that is a whole pile of data which is being shared. But within that, there's no trust. And we've seen there are, at any one time, you can look on the internet, there's a million scams going on. There's a whole pile of distrust in the internet. Something like blockchain is able to put trust back into that mechanism. Because what we're finding is that the internet is getting to a point where it's going to not enable us, but actually cripple us because of the lack of trust in that.
You just don't know what's going on.
We just don't know. The interesting thing I'd like you to talk about, Sven, is you're talking about blockchain as if it's only one blockchain. But there are multiple blockchains that are floating around. I'd like to know more about what that looks like.
Really good point. So the blockchain that everyone kind of knows is what underpins cryptocurrencies, and the most popular one being Bitcoin and all that sort of thing. And that's true, right? And in fact, it's testament as to how well blockchain works, because if you can work with currencies and values, that's great, right? That's a public-based or Bitcoin-based blockchain, but blockchain is not difficult to create, right? And there are hundreds of them. So a lot of private organizations are building private blockchains so they can do things in retail and logistics and all these things, right? And then, so that's the private side of blockchain, and then you've got the public blockchains like Ethereum is an example where you can use their capability. And then there's another layer on top of that, and Beck already mentioned it, things like smart contracts, or also known as contracts as code, right? That work with particular blockchains. So right now, what you're seeing, it's kind of like the .com boom, right? You're seeing a whole proliferation of blockchains But at some point, it's going to have to settle to something, to your point, Andrew, that everyone can trust. And that doesn't mean a global blockchain or the world blockchain. What it means is some of them will bubble to the surface, like the Googles of the world from a search engine perspective. Bad example of trust, but...
Where did that come from?
But a couple of them bubble to the surface and they become your de facto blockchains that we're working on. We're not there yet, and that's definitely another reason why to talk about it. How do we get to that?
Well, and I think a good analogy is, sorry Beck, and I'm not going to talk again in a moment. A good analogy is...
I'm used to it.
Sorry, but what we have is we've got a number of leading brands of cars, right? So they are vehicles that, in the end, I'm not wanting to make that straight analogy of a blockchain being a transport mechanism, but there's a whole pile of standards that they must adhere to.
Yes.
And I think these are really critical points that governments need to think about, that if you're going to have multiple blockchains, we have to all understand that they're safe to use for different mechanisms. You buy a four-wheel drive for one, or you buy a sports car for another. It's a different mechanism, and you might have smart contracts running on that style of blockchain, and you might have crypto running on this style of blockchain.
That's a really good point.
So I think there's some really important things that governments need to take control of there.
But is there also a question around...
Yeah, that's right.
I'm interrupting you, interrupting
I'll back that up. That's a double.
Will there be a scalability issue with the more transactions that occur?
That is actually a really good question, because you may or may not have seen in the press that things like cryptocurrency are being seen as a problem because they soak up so much computer power, and essentially they've got a green energy footprint that is not really sustainable. But they're using all that power because they have to scale. Now, every time, remember I talked about those blocks, and every time a block changes, it's recalculating. And this is what miners do essentially. Their job is to make sure that all those recalculations are, just like an auditor, right? They do the technology auditing of it. That takes lots and lots of power, and power is a problem with scalability, right?
Yes.
Now, what we need to do from a blockchain perspective as well in the planning phase is go, well, if we're going to build another big private or a big public blockchain for a purpose, a more critical purpose or strategic purpose, we need to build that on green energy, as an example. Because if companies are going to use blockchain, which we were hoping they would use from a trust perspective, it needs to add to their green credentials and not go away from their green credentials.
Harvard Business Review actually tweeted this morning that blockchain currently is consuming enough energy that a small country does. It's like I think it was 0.55% of the world's energy.
What they're not calculating, because we're not there yet, is if you're using blockchain for the purposes of trust, by circumventing all the intermediaries and the energy that all those intermediaries use, you're actually saving a lot of energy as well. So right now it's a one-way calculation.
It's not a balanced scorecard. We're not talking about the floors of buildings being taken up by people moving paper from one desk to another desk.
Exactly.
We're not taking that into account, because if we could remove that, there'd be a significant reduction in the overall energy consumption. Plus, you're getting those people's brains working on stuff that is really critical, as opposed to which is important and process-driven, but can be very easily handled in a blockchain environment.
Spot on.
Exactly. Well, I think we've clearly covered what is blockchain. But if we go into our second question, which is the difference between blockchain and the internet.
Yes. Yeah. Well, so it comes down to trust at the end of the day. The internet has gotten us this far, right? And it's been great. But what you also got to think about the internet is how it's proliferated has all been around just getting people connected, getting people data, getting people to share information. It's been great, right? But we're now going into a different world, right? And that different world is where things that are on the internet and digital information is getting closer and closer to the physical world. And basically shit gets real now, right? Because what happens has to be trusted. You can't, it's not about just lowering the cost of getting data sharing and entrepreneurship. Now it's about using that data that you can absolutely trust to drive a truck.
Well, and I think I can make an analogy here, is the internet and blockchain is like commercial brewery and craft brewing. And the reason we're sitting here, in Noble Experiment, and we're drinking Smuggler's Wharf Brewery beer, is that we know the provenance of this beer a lot better. We know how, because I'm the brewer, and we know that the malt and the hops are individually picked and are tailored for the job, as opposed to in a internet sense, where you've got this bulk sense of everything going on, you don't have any individuality. And back to the point about trust and
that's actually it's a really, really good physical world point that you're making over there, because people want to know more than just the fact that there's a beer in their glass. What they want to know is that it's been sourced correctly.
Yes,
they want to know, but not just by some advertising agency saying, of course, you know all the green fields that
you
they
want
show.
it true. Yeah,
what, advertising's not real?
I know, right? But again, you're going into an environment, unlike the internet, where lying is very, very, very difficult. And one of the cool things about that, from a cost-saving perspective, is if it's difficult to lie, then from an auditing and legal and all those perspectives, you now only have to do that by exception. You don't have to always check the same company just on a weekly basis.
Just because it's a process.
Because it's a process.
Yes.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So why is this relevant today? Why is it important now to talk about?
I think it's because of the speed of the economy. I think it's because the world has never been more of a global place. There's never been more trade. Let's just take the circumstances we're in today, where we've got COVID and we've got travel restrictions all over the world. We want to open the world up. If we have an immutable ledger that can attach to me as Andrew Phillips on a blockchain process, I can travel throughout the world because I'm vaccinated and I've got that. So these sorts of mechanisms are going to become more and more important as we go, and it's just because of globalization. It's because of speed. It's because of trust. We as a community, as a society, we expect it.
I'll probably add to that as well, and we kind of alluded to it earlier on, is that the physical and technology world are coming together, right? So when we talk about the internet has grown, and now we've got other things like AI and ML and analytics, we've got 5G networks, we've got IoT, all these acronyms are all coming together. What it's doing, though, is it's making us more and more reliant on data, right? And the more that occurs, the more you need to trust that data, and blockchain provides that level of trust. Now, to your point earlier on, it's not the only thing, right?
Yes.
But it is a key component of it, because it really changes how you need to think about things. And that's why we need to talk about it now, because people will talk about Industry 4.0 or the fourth industrial revolution. That is basically the physical and the digital coming together to drive your trucks, to do all sorts of things that our lives will eventually depend on.
Where is all that data going to sit?
Well, that's an interesting point, because a lot of people think, oh my God, it's all going to be in one place. That's actually completely the opposite. When you have things like blockchain, the data can actually stay where it originates, because you don't have to put it somewhere in a data lake or into a warehouse or anything like that, because you actually trust the source. So it actually distributes all that data.
The location is not relevant.
Correct.
Yeah.
All you need to do, and this is why they call it a peer-to-peer environment. You just need to know where it's coming from, where it's going, end of story.
If we go into the good, the bad and the ugly, I think one of the good things is complex supply chains. So if you think about being able to track or trace right from the very source to when the consumer has it, things like blood diamonds, gems, sourcing that from the mining right through to the end. Or if you think about contaminated food, if you know the exact source, it might actually just be in the supermarket down the road and in nowhere else in the world, so you don't have to pull all the baby formula off the shelves.
that is a very mixed metaphor, but a good one.
I just brought it all in together to make one.
It's nice.
From blood
It's one of those marble cakes.
Blood diamonds to baby formula.
Yes, what I'm talking about is basically things don't have to be as catastrophic.
Correct, and that's such a brilliant example, because right now, when there is a contamination, because we don't know where things come from, you just take a blanket approach. Pigs get killed, in the millions, right?
Yes.
And vegetables get thrown away.
So what's bad about the technology?
What's bad about the technology is that it's on its own, it's actually limited in its function, right? It's like saying, think pre-cars, right? No cars on the road. You've just got these horses and everything, and then someone pitches up with the very first car, not the very first car, like a car as we know it, right? And you go, well, this is great. This is going to solve all our problems. You can do all these things with it, but there's no roads, there's no traffic signs, there's no destinations, right? So everyone with a horse is going to look at this car and go, look, it looks great, but I don't get it, right? So, so the bad thing is, this is not all going to happen without us actually tackling the really important subjects. Is how do we get regulations to support this? How do we self-disrupt our banking systems, our legal systems, because that's what's going to be needed if we're going to take advantage of this. Is it worth it? Yes, it is, because it makes us globally competitive.
Yeah.
Agree. What about the ugly, Andrew?
Well, I think there's a side of what Sven's talking about, which is the ugly, which is the undermining of blockchain is ugly by the people who feel they'll be affected by it. I also think that there's a little bit of stigma with blockchain because the origination of it in the dark web, right? So there's a piece of that we have to really unpack and explain to people around the fact that just because that's where it originated, it in and of itself, it is actually got nothing wrong with it. Yeah. But sadly, it was used in the early parts of it, and probably still being used today. Not probably, definitely. For illegal purposes. So that's the ugly part of blockchain that I see. Yeah,
it's kind of like blaming a road because the bank robber used it
to get away on it. Absolutely,
yeah,
it's a very valid
road.
Yeah,
it'll get your child to the hospital.
Exactly,
right?
That's right. Yeah, or get you to the pub.
Or get you to the pub.
More important.
The noble experiment.
The noble experiment. Yes. Great pub.
Yeah.
Have to go.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else you want to highlight around blockchain before we head to the whinge file?
I think that's been a good conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, for me, I would like the conversation to continue. Right.
Yes.
So from my perspective, if you have comments, if you've got questions, if you just don't get it, that's okay. A lot of people don't get it, but give us your views. Right. Tell us what you think. I think let's just keep the conversation going.
I think that's a great idea. And if you go over to LinkedIn, where Sven Brook has actually posted a couple of articles so far, 2 out of 4. On this exact subject, I think you get a lot out of it and it become a lot more clearer.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. Okay, whinge file. Oh, okay, all right. Now.
Are you starting? You go first.
You go first.
I always go first.
Nice.
So my whinge is mask, but not for the reason that you think.
Mask?
Right.
Mask.
Whoa.
Face mask.
Oh, that's very unpopular.
And it's my sister and I, we are both the same because we are both quite deaf in our left ear.
Right.
So for us, when somebody's wearing a mask, we've got bugger all hope of hearing them because we generally do a lot of lip reading. With a mask on, it's so muffled. The amount of times when you are at the shops and it's just the local shops, like, lockdown, there's not much that's open, but you get asked a question or you get told something and you're like, huh? You start off with, excuse me, because polite.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, pardon me.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I can't hear you, I'm deaf in this ear. And generally the people feel so bad.
What's your solution for that? How are you going to get around that? Because we
Take
clearly
the
know
mask
masks are important, but it's also could be as dangerous for you not hearing someone say something. So what's the solution?
And it's just a whinge, and it's totally fine.
Yeah.
And, you get over it because hey, I'm alive and well, and all those sorts of things.
You shouldn't have hearing problems at the age of 29.
I know,
that's
29. It's an issue. It's I agree with you.
Yeah.
But yes, I know. What is the solution to that? No masks would be great.
Interesting whinge though, because it does highlight an unexpected consequence.
Yes.
Right? We were talking about it the other day when you're having meetings, business meetings, right?
Yeah.
How much of that meeting is reading people's
tonality?
faces?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And now we're all on Zoom and we're all covered up. Well, not on Zoom, but
yeah.
All right,
we're
stop
missing.
stealing my whinge.
Sorry, no,
it's your whinge. You got it.
It's your whinge. Yeah, you go for it. All right, what's yours?
Oh, well, look, I'm going to keep with the whole COVID theme, and my whinge is the number of over 60-year-olds who haven't been vaccinated. What's going on, guys? Get out there and get vaccinated. I was really interesting to hear Norman Swan on the ABC Coronacast saying that there's a whole pile of over 60-year-olds wanting to wait until they get Pfizer, but they'll be behind the 12-year-olds. They aren't. They get out there and get vaccinated. Get it done as soon as you possible. I just don't get it. What's going on?
Well, mine's going to sound really nebbish now because it's got nothing to do with world pandemics.
Oh, really?
All right, we're going to replace you on the next show.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm going to be careful here. That's a tough crowd. No, look, mine's a very, very simple one. I don't know if you guys have gone to a supermarket lately, but when they take a perfectly good fruit, right?
And put a sticker on it.
No.
That is
I hate that as well.
The sticker. You pick it off.
How you get it into your teeth?
Yeah.
No, they take a perfectly good fruit, they peel it, and then they wrap it in plastic.
Oh, that's disgusting.
Yeah, you know,
No, I'm up for it.
you
Yeah.
know, next to bottled water, that's another one of my where I go, wow, who even thought of that, and who on earth approved that? So that's my whinge file. Don't do that, whoever you are. Don't do that.
Yeah, well,
That's
I think we need to have that conversation about packaging and recycling, and that would be, even though it's not really a technology conversation, it's got massive impacts
But
for
there
us.
could be a technology solution
Could
somewhere in
well
there,
be a technology
right?
solution.
We're talking
Yeah.
about outcomes.
Yes,
Technology can help us get there.
Absolutely, yeah.
Boom.
All right. Well, thank you so much for watching. All the links, as you know, will be on our social media pages. We'd love to continue the conversation. And we're out.
Lovely.